Hey, everybody, and welcome to another pre-draft extravaganza week here at the SteelerFury.com podcast. I am your host, Wil Masisak, also known as Accidental Zen on Twitter, or if you're at Steeler Fury, Bradshaw to Ben. I got too many names. Perch, SteelPerch has joined us from the great beyond. You've come back to spiritually visit us here at the podcast. How are you?
I keep trying to get out, and you keep reeling me back in.
Pulling you back in. Yeah, it's true. Although to be fair, when things were going well last year, you were like, I'm going to come on and talk soon about the team," and then it just started plummeting, and you were like, "I'm not talking about this team anymore," but I'm making you talk about it today. So, Perch, I'm giving you the floor. You were not heard from on this show about anything that happened last year. The whole switching quarterbacks midstream, the way the season ended, everything that was said after that. But let's give you a chance to catch up, Birch. What have you been carrying all around? Lighten your load. Let go.
Boy, I'll start at the beginning. I was in favor of going to Russell Wilson because it was obvious Justin Fields is not an NFL passer, and what the Steelers do not do at an NFL level is throw the football. Um, you know, Russell Wilson came in and made a few plays here and there, but i- listen, it doesn't matter who they draft, if they sign Aaron Rodgers, as long as Mike Tomlin is running the show, nothing matters. He's so risk adverse. It doesn't matter if it was late career Big Ben, if it was uh, Russell Wilson, or any of the quarterbacks in between. They won't throw to the middle of the field. They don't throw medium distances. It's either short, behind the line of scrimmage, or a deep ball down the sideline. Teams have figured out how to shut that down. Now, with George Pickens, they were able to make some plays over it. Now, with DK and George, maybe it'll open up a little bit more. But until Tomlin's gone and they actually move to a modern offensive philosophy, nothing we talk about the rest of the show is going to matter.
Well, yes, that's true, but we got to talk about it something anyway. I mean, you were in favor of Russell Wilson. Do you think that the season would have ended any differently if Justin Fields had remained a starter?
Oh no! Oh no! No, it doesn't matter. I mean, even if they get Aaron Rodgers and he has a bounce back great year, they're going to lose the first round of the playoffs. The defense is going to get gashed. That's a fact. Mike Tomlin's supposed to be this miraculous defensive coordinator, head coach guy. Um, they spend more than any other team in the league on defense. And what's happened every single playoff game for 5, 6 years in a row, however many it's been now, they get blown out on defense. Embarrassingly bad. They're down 3, 4 touchdowns before the game's even started. And if it wasn't for the Ravens taking a knee, in the red zone at the end of that game, they give up 35 again. It was basically a mercy, like, hey, we're just going to take a knee not to run up the score on you. So it doesn't matter. Nothing matters until Tomlin's gone, and Tomlin's not going until he wants to go. Hopefully, I think he's got, what, 2 years left. If this year goes horribly bad, maybe they give him one more year to kind of play out the string, or they mutually agree to part ways. But I don't know. The only hope is the older Rooney is looking to retire, and we're going to get a younger Rooney in, and maybe that'll shake things up. So that's where we are. Nothing matters until Tomlin's gone, and the owner's too much of a chicken shit to move away from him.
Yeah, well, I feel like it's not just, I mean, to me, I'm starting to feel like there are many things we can blame Mike Tomlin on. The his mentality about how to go about winning football games, which is antiquated. The people that are moving ahead of him and teams that are moving ahead are teams that have embraced the idea of, you gotta attack and try to make a difference on first and second down in the league, and you can't just sit back and wait, for not taking any chances and let the other team make mistakes and win. That formula, was pretty effective at one time in the league. It was definitely effective enough to be mediocre. That'll put you in the middle somewhere, right? Because teams that have a better approach or better talent are going to beat you. Teams that have lesser talent or worse approach than you're going to beat them. So, the league is even enough that maybe you end up somewhere near 500. But I feel like the owner interferes in two ways, and let's see what you think about this. The first one is the style of play. He endorses it. It's like he's in partnership with Mike Tomlin. It's the present owner were to hire a new coach right now, I think he'd hire a very similar coach to Mike Tomlin. That's one, that's bad enough. But number two is there's no accountability. The assistant coaching situation is so bad. Why can't the owner of a very strong franchise with a brand name ownership, why can't they hold the coach accountable for what's happening outside of that? Is it because they're dictating to him what he has to do?
I think that they're so afraid of change, and Tomlin gets them what they want. They're always relevant. They're always in the playoff mix. They make the playoffs more often than not, and the standards just keep shrinking. It used to be about winning Super Bowls, and then it was like, well, hey, let's make it at least to a conference championship game, and it's like, well, let's win playoff games, and it's like, yeah, just making it to the playoffs is a good season, and then it's like, well, hey, never had a losing season. We get our 8 or 9 wins, and we're 500 or better, and that's what the standard currently is. And you're absolutely right. I mean, they will not hire, or Mike Tomlin will not hire an offensive or defensive coordinator and give them the keys to do what they want. He's got his stamp on both sides of the ball. Offense, be conservative. Don't throw down the field. Run the ball. Try and milk the clock. Defense, keep the game close, and then at the end, we're going to try to pull off something miraculously to beat a 2-12 team by a field goal at the end. And that's, they try to play that against every team, and against the bad teams, it usually works. Against the mediocre team, it usually works. Against the good teams, they get blown out. And that's Steelers football. It's where we're stuck. And they talked to Tomlin after another embarrassing failure in the playoffs talks, but there's definitely going to be changes. There's going to be a lot of changes. What do? We dumped all of our quarterbacks and replaced them with our old quarterback, Mason Rudolph. Is that a change? They hired an inside linebackers coach and a defensive backs coach. So no change to a coordinator, just like random, not even a linebackers coach, an inside linebackers coach, and then a defensive backs coach. When you know damn well Mike Tomlin's a former defensive backs coach, he's the one that's going to be imprinting on whatever they do, whatever schemes they run on the back end of the defense. So he's got a yes man under him that he's paying some money and going to give him the opportunity to run some drills in practice and work with the guys. But there's nobody that's been brought in that's going to change philosophy or scheme or play calling or anything like that. It's a bunch of more Tomlin yes men in positions that really don't matter. Nobody's won or lost a Super Bowl because of an inside linebacker coach they brought in.
Yeah. They barely won or lost a Super Bowl, but based on an inside linebacker. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, these days, unless you got somebody like Fred Warner roaming the middle of your defense, it's not even like a thing right now in the NFL. They're figuring out ways defenses are figuring out ways to stop teams without spending premium picks on linebackers, and safeties. And we don't have so much invested in that right now for the Steelers. But Perch, what I was going to say was, even despite the schemes and Tomlinisms, in terms of what he likes to do on the field, I feel like if you had just simply had a strong general manager who was brought in to like be a partner with Mike Tomlin rather than to serve him, this is why I fault ownership. If you at least gave that person the ball when it came to scouting in the draft and player acquisition, I feel like you could fix some of the problems. You could at least keep stocking up on offensive defensive line. You could do things to build a Philadelphia Eagles style team, or you could trade away assets, that are older, that you're not stuck paying a gigantic contract to, and so on. But since we don't have that, and we have this sort of like a kind of a weird loyalty to people that are players that are not necessarily great. They're just, good players standing in the way, or they're older players that don't have that much time left. Don't you feel like if you had if you Howie Roseman came in right now, the GM of Philadelphia, and this is something that I'm going to say like on every show this week, but if he came in and was the GM of the Steelers, do you think they could turn it? I bet you they could turn it around quickly.
Well, I mean, we hired another GM from from the Eagles, and I think Tomlin's got final say on all that stuff. And we can go back. We talked about Kevin Colbert and how he built those Super Bowl teams, and how amazing all his for every single year was a home run in the first round, and then all of a sudden, once Tomlin got established, Colbert's picks sucked. Like, what happened? What changed? Was
Yep.
Tomlin getting more input? I remember an interview with Colbert where he said, hey, we're going to be able to draft some different types of players now because of Tomlin and the schemes that he wanted and whatnot. And as soon as that conversation went out and that interview went out, like the quality of the drafting went from excellent to horrible. There was no in between. I mean, you can go back, 4, 5, 6 offensive or first round picks in a row that were just duds for the Steelers, where they had probably gone a 10-year stretch without missing maybe more than one. So, yeah, it doesn't, again, nothing we talk about the rest of this call is going to matter until Mike Tomlin's gone and replaced with a better. And they had the opportunity to do it this offseason.
Yep.
Some good coaches. The offensive coordinator from the Lions that went up
Ben
to
Johnson. Yeah.
Ben Johnson that went up to Chicago. I mean, that guy gets offense, right? And he's gonna watch what he does in Chicago. He's already fixed their offensive line in one offseason. He's got some good skill players, but just watching the Lions play, it the unpredictability, the way that they call plays is so much different than watching the Steelers. Like uh, until they get something like that in here, and who knows? I mean, Rooney's are so married to defense that the next coach might be another defensive
Yeah,
coordinator.
that's what I said. I think right, if it's the same, Rooney running things and when they hire the next coach, they're gonna end up with a very similar guy.
And honestly, I mean, I'll say this real quick, not to cut you off, but
No,
like
okay.
the 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 best teams in the league, and probably the second most important thing in the league is who's calling your offensive plays. So
Yep.
your quarterback is number one, and number two is your play caller. And if your key play caller as an offensive coordinator, he's going to get hired away to be a head coach somewhere else. So the teams that are in the best positions in the league right now have great offensive minds as the head coach. So
Yep.
an Andy Reid could stand there on the sidelines and call plays, and it doesn't matter who the hell his offensive coordinator in name only is. That team's going to be good and they're going to be elite. And that's the blueprint. Build your trenches, offensive and defensive line, get a
Hmm.
great quarterback and a great play caller. And
Well,
we're doing the opposite. Like we're getting linebacker. We want linebackers in the first round and a defensive coach, and we're going to hire new defensive
yeah.
linebacker, inside and outside linebacker coaches. It's just it's so wrong. It's blatantly obvious to see. Hey, look at these great teams. They're very smart on offense. They've got a really good quarterback, and then they build the trenches. And our defensive line is ancient and got holes in it. The offensive line, they're trying to fix it, but they screwed that up. Wait to see what we have at left tackle this year. And we have the worst offensive line in the league as our head coach.
Well, listen, I just decided I don't know if I could fix the Steelers with four hires, but I'll bet you I could make the Steelers a hell of a lot better with four hires. You ready?
Yeah.
It's offensive and defensive coordinators who make the most out of whatever they have to work with. Because there's a lot of guys like that in the league, and often they're available, and often that's a team like the Steelers would be attractive for them if it weren't for what their head coach is about, right? But let's say in a dream world, you get an offensive and defensive coordinator, and an offensive line coach, and a defensive line coach. I feel like that would make if you like that's Philly's secret sauce. They have the best offensive line coach in the league developing guys. They have a very, they always have different guys, but they always have somebody creative calling plays on offense. And then they have this like brilliant guy on defense who's like, I'm going to take all these athletes from all over the place or all from Georgia or whatever it takes. And I'm just going to keep, moving them around and figuring out stuff for them to do that's hard for the other team to stop. They're not married to some formation. They're not married to, we're going to run this guy out there on every play, blah, blah, blah. So I feel like that's a big hole, but that's to me, that's what ownership is for. Ownership after a season like last year, and after giving up 300 yards on the ground with a healthy TJ Watt, a playing well Cameron Hayward, and Minka Fitzpatrick, you're still getting absolutely gashed in the playoffs. I feel like after that, that's when the ownership has to come in and be like, look, man, I love you. I love what the team wants to play for you, and you have a record of consistent success and blah, blah, blah. But these things need to change. And we need to bring in these minds from outside the loop who are going to make things better. Would that not make this team better?
Yeah, and to your point, the only way to stop Brady and Mahomes And the Steelers are probably the team that has fared the absolute worst against those two quarterbacks. Is a defense that can get pressure with their front four without blitzing. That can blow it up in the they have interior pass rushers and outside pass rushers that can get there. The Steelers don't have that. You got a fat, lazy nose tackle. You got a couple of, five techs that get a little bit of pressure. You're relying everything on, your outside linebackers coming off the edge, and teams are just able to chip them with a running back or tight end. You can't really do that if you've got a defensive tackle in the middle that can just blow through, the block of a center and a guard.
Yeah.
And again, you look at teams like the Eagles, like the Tampa Bay Bucks, like the New York Giants. They were able to beat Brady and Mahomes in the playoffs. It's the answer's out there, guys. Look at the league. This
Yeah.
is how you win these games. The answer's out there, and we're doing the opposite. Get a four-man rotation on the line and get depth. Like I said, this is a great draft for defensive linemen. And we
Yeah.
traded our second round pick away, which is where some of these guys are going to fall, for a freaking receiver. It's stupid. Like in this draft, seriously, I would take three defensive linemen.
I would take 3 second-round picks. Like that,
Yeah.
to give away that pick for a wide. Like, okay, I like DK Metcalf. He's great and all, but to me, unless you're trading George Pickens. Like, in other words, you've had it with George Pickens. He's not re-signing in a year, and you've just decided to like take your medicine and try to get a second-round pick for him this year, which you probably could do. There's probably a team there that would take him in round two. And like, unless that's the plan, giving away your second rounder for DK Metcalf is crazy to me. Like, and
Well,
I'm
let's talk about asset management too. What assets do you have to build a roster? You got salary cap and draft picks. I've always said you never give away both for one player. So they gave up a big chunk of their salary cap and a second round pick for this guy. Had we traded a second, or used a second round pick on a receiver, I think that gets you better off. Or hey, draft a receiver in the first round, keep your second round pick, get one of the defensive linemen in a historically deep defensive line draft. There you go. $25 million of savings you could play with in free agency. Doesn't that make more sense? Uh,
yes. It's just like I don't understand the okay, yes, when your offense consists of, you know, running the football and trying not to fumble for 2 downs so you can get the third and manageable, and then throwing up a deep ball on the sidelines and hoping somebody will catch it. When that's your offense, DK Metcalf and George Pickens become premium parts of your offense no matter what, right? So,
if you have two, right? Not if you have one, because the safety is rotating towards Pickens
right.
or DK. If you drop one of the two,
Yeah.
um, it's ridiculous. I mean, like I said, the answers are very obvious for any knucklehead who's sitting at home, piling down a bag of chips, watching football on the TV, saying, "Boy, it seems like you have to have a good offensive coordinator and a good quarterback to win this league." And the
Seems
only way
like
to
it.
stop that is a dominant defensive line that can get pressure with four guys without a blitz, that can pressure up the middle and make that quarterback shit his pants. And that's what we just saw in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
So we saw it happen to Tom Brady twice. This isn't just a 1 or 2 year thing
Right.
hey, this is this new revelation that's come to us. It's 15 years and we
Yeah.
still haven't made the correction to go do that. Nothing changes until Mike Tomlin is gone. Thank you very
Yes.
much.
It's the oil tanker turning at sea, baby. That's big change in Pittsburgh. Um, we're going to talk. I want to talk to you about the draft a little bit in a minute, but we haven't yet touched on really about quarterback. And I know there's one name in the quarterback conversation for the Pittsburgh Steelers that you really can't wait to talk about, and that, of course, is Mason Rudolph. No, I'm kidding. What it's what explain to me the quarterback, how they handled the quarterback position this offseason, because it feels like they wanted to go to Russell Wilson after Justin Fields, but then they weren't interested. Once Russell Wilson decided he was going to push back against the offensive coordinator, they don't want him. So then they turned to Justin Fields, and they're like, Justin Fields is like, I want to get paid, and they're like, well, we want you, but we don't want to pay you. So he leaves, and then they start getting into these conversations with Aaron Rodgers, blah blah blah, and he's treating them like like he's some hot chick on Instagram, and they DM'd him out of sheer hubris, and the fact that he hasn't actually said no yet makes them think that he's still in love with them, whatever. But then they're going to end up drafting Jalen Milroe at 21, who's basically Justin Fields. Like, Perch, please make it make sense to me.
If they do that, then I'm just turning the TV off for the year. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, Jalen Milroe is Justin Fields. Justin Fields is Jalen Milroe for the most all intents and purposes. I kind of understand that they had the two guys in last year. They thought both of them were good enough quarterbacks to be a starter for the team, but they weren't in love with any of them. Kind of like all of us fans, like, yeah, we can win games with either of those guys, but neither of those guys are winning us anything of substance, right?
Yep.
And you need a quarterback, so hey, let's bring back Mason Rudolph, and he's going to be a solid backup in case somebody gets hurt, or if we draft a young guy, to kind of work with, and then one of these guys. But the whole thing, if we end up paying Aaron Rodgers 10 million more than we would have paid Justin Fields, with Rodgers, it's, hey, maybe we can catch lightning in a bottle 1 year. I mean, if he can even make it through a year, he's not even a 2-year project at this point. He's a 1 year only. It just doesn't make a lot. I mean, if I can get Aaron Rodgers for the same price, yeah, sure, I would take that chance. So I don't know. My goal is to be as bad at quarterback as possible this year, to acquire as many picks as we can for next year, and then aggressively move up because we're probably getting a third, fourth, fifth, and sixth round compensation pick next year.
Yep.
I mean, you can literally, trade a one, two, three, and maybe the one the next year to move up to the top five and get, a stud quarterback if you see it. Because there's a lot of teams that are going to be probably drafting pretty early that just picked a quarterback this year or last
Hmm.
year, or, and they're not going to take another one on top of it. So one of these quarterbacks is going to fall down, somewhere between 6 and 10. And I think we should, depending on where we finish, if we finish around the 16th pick or something like that with a 9-8 record, you can move up 10 spots without, costing yourself too much. So that's definitely possible. And that's kind of what I hope to see. I don't care if it's Aaron Rodgers, like I said, either be fun or interesting. And if Aaron Rodgers is here, the Steelers will be interesting. They may not be good, but they'll be interesting. And gear up for next year. You've got to get the quarterback right next year. And again, if we get a new quarterback and they bring him in under Mike Tomlin and in this system and tell him, hey, all that shit that made you great in college,
Yeah,
don't do
forget
that.
it.
Throw it behind the line of scrimmage, and when it's third and 9, chuck that fucking thing 20 yards downfield and hope that your receiver can make some athletic play and bail you out. Because we're not letting you work the middle of the field at all. We're not throwing intermediate. We're not throwing intermediate on early downs. We're handing it off, or we're throwing it behind the line of scrimmage until we absolutely have to take a shot deep, and
Yeah.
only deep down the sideline where it can go out of bounds.
I mean,
That's Steelers football. That will ruin any quarterback. Period.
I think you need the only sort of almost Tomlin proof quarterback to be one that's transcendent of the scheme enough that they could actually just be like, all right, please make a play for us on third down, or we're down 2 touchdowns, like go for it. Like they have to be good enough in that scenario to overcome what the game plan is. And I think that's sort of how Ben's career evolved, right? In the beginning, it was very conservative, and then as they got into, particularly into later in the year, his first year when they were suddenly a playoff contender, then they were like, please make a play on third down, please make a play when we're down. So that might work, and then and it requires a draft that has two or three of those guys instead of one. And the perfect scenario is like it happened in 2004, where the best guy is the third one off the board. Like the other guys are more hyped, but there's a guy that's maybe better. That's you see it. Like I think that has a good chance of happening next year because I feel like there's, you know, you especially if Arch Manning comes out, because if Arch Manning comes out, then you've got Sellers and Taylor Green and those guys are going to be a little lost in the shuffle. I wouldn't be surprised if they were quarterbacks 3 and 4 off the board, and you got a real shot at a guy like that next year if they come out.
That's, yeah, kind of what it kind of reminds me of the draft with Ben, where Manning's name was Manning, and he was going to go high, and Rivers had been in college for like 5 years, and everybody had seen what he had done, and Ben played in the MAC, and it was like, well, yeah, this guy's big and athletic and strong and can do a lot of stuff, but he's never played. He played one game against Iowa, and his team got his ass beat. So yeah, I mean that kind of pushed him down. But Lenora Sellers is the one I think that, like you said, that matches up really well to be the third quarterback off the board, and maybe he comes off the board somewhere between pick 7 and 11. And if we're drafting 10 spots roughly below that, It's not, you may
Not
give up
impossible.
a 1, 2, and 3 next year, and then you've got a 3, 4, and 5 still from your comp picks. So you're really just losing, you're losing out on your second round pick, which we don't have this year anyway.
Hmm.
Maybe that can happen. But, like you said with Ben when he was young, they were giving him half the field reads and they were giving him some nice play action because we had a better offensive coordinator back then than we do now. But then, Ben would go playground Ben and make the most spectacular plays of the game ad lib. And they kind of realized, hey, I think we've got something here. Let
Right.
this guy cook. Let's let him, not rope him in too much. Where Tomlin with a rookie, I don't know how much leeway he would give him in that. He wants that ball out quick. He wants,
Yeah.
hey, just go out there and throw checkdowns until it's 3rd and 8, and then we're going to throw a 20-yard bomb down the sideline. It's ridiculous. Or second and inches, and we're going to throw the 30-yard bomb down the sideline.
Yeah, because it was one on one. We took a shot. You know.
My other fear is they look at Drew Aller as the next Ben and draft him, but he doesn't have the accuracy or just the clutchness. He's anti-clutch. If a big spot comes up in a game, that guy finds a way to screw it up. I've tried. I've thought for years. I tried to like him a lot, and it's not working.
Yeah. Well, I could see as sort of a Phil Rivers, comp for him in a way. Not necessarily as good a passer as Rivers was, but in terms of having that thing where at the end of the game is just for some reason he's the anti-clutch. That always struck me as a feature of, like, you could set your watch by Rivers making a turnover or a horrible play late in the game.
Yeah, I just don't like how he does under pressure, and
Yeah.
the games where he's inaccurate. He's wildly inaccurate. I mean, when he's playing Bowling Green and he's got a clean pocket and he's got better athletes than the people who are defending him, he
Yeah.
looks really good.
Yeah.
But, the make of a quarterback is, what do you do when pressure's in your face? What do you do when the chips are down? What do you do when things are tough?
Yep.
And he doesn't. He just melts. I understand he's still a young guy, and maybe that'll change this year. But I've been waiting for a few years.
Yeah. For you've been waiting for
I've
the
been waiting.
years.
Trust me, I've been screaming at the
Yeah.
TV for years, and it hasn't happened. So.
But yeah, this to that point though, like having this is why I say when I say transcendent quarterback, what I mean mainly is that he doesn't require you to have the perfect scheme for him to succeed. And like, uh, I mean, it's going to be a moot point anyway. But this is why you don't take a Jackson Dart at pick 21, for instance, because it's like you're not going to put him in that offense. Your offense that you're running in Pittsburgh is not that offense, and he's not throwing to a bunch of wide open guys and chucking it around the field at a high tempo. We don't do any of those things. We slow it down. We run it a lot. We give very simple, short passes and hope that the guys can run from there. Like we don't really do what Mississippi does at all. I feel like I can't understand why people would even contemplate that as a pick. Now Jalen Milrow, I could 100% see them. I predicted it a month ago. That was my call a month ago that they were going to go to that Alabama Pro Day and just fawn all over a quarterback like that because this is my Tomlin for 5 or 6 years now. He's probably done 5 press conferences or interviews where he's talked about what he's looking for in a young quarterback and what they need to have, and that is this mobility to be able to use their legs until they can figure out how to pass, how to be a passer in the NFL. And Jalen Milrow is, he's that guy. He has the leadership and he has an upside and he's young and played in the SEC at a premium school and he was a huge recruit. Like I feel like with this conversation about 2026 quarterbacks is going to be absolutely set on fire at pick 21. I mean, if they don't
I
trade
really,
up, it's
yeah,
worse.
I really think that the Steelers' interest in those two guys, or if they fall to round 3. And I don't think Milrow makes. I think he makes it into. I could see the Browns taking him at the top of round 2. Something like that, where they can go ahead and get an edge rusher or a receiver, in round 1, and then take him in round 2, and then come back and get a running back or something in round 3, and kind of all of a sudden they've got a really good offense to go with their defense. Um, that's kind of what I see, but. I would be shocked if they took a quarterback at 21. Now, Shadur Sanders, there's, it was pretty much guaranteed he was going top 2 or 3, and then it's looking more like the Browns are not going to take him, and then the Saints are kind of the next landing spot at 9, and if they don't take him,
Yeah.
it's realistic that he drops to 21. I think is he in town today or yesterday or
Yesterday, I
coming into
think, or
town?
today, whatever.
Yeah, that's an interesting one too. I could see Tomlin pulling that trigger if he fell to 21. They could sell it as, "Hey, we had this guy rated in the top 5 and didn't think he'd drop to us,"
Yeah.
with him, he's got his issues too. I think he could be a solid NFL starter. I don't think he's a guy that you build the franchise around or is a huge difference maker, but
Yeah.
especially again, you're going to bring him in and then neuter him. But I mean, at Colorado, he kind of played that Steelers offense a bit, where a large chunk of his passes are behind the line of scrimmage or at the line of scrimmage, and then, when he had to, he throws a decent deep ball down the field. But
Yeah.
because they were kind of outmatched on the offensive line at times, and he was running for his life, and they had to get the ball out quick.
He'll throw right
Um,
home.
he'll fit right in here, so you can kind of see. They can probably watch his tape and be like, "Hey, we do that. We suck too. We're the Colorado of the AFC."
I mean, in a rational NFL draft world, sure, I could see all of that scenario you just. But then here's the thing: were there 5 quarterbacks drafted in the first round last year? I mean, come on, man. The reality is, even though the value for us for a guy like Jalen Milroe is like on the end of day 2 or beginning of day 3, he's going in the first round, man. They're all the Jackson Dart, uh, Sanders, Ward, and Milrow are all going round 1, and there
Well,
may be
I mean, look
another
back
guy
to
that goes
the
around one
Kenny
late.
Pickett draft. Kenny Pickett, the Steelers took it in the 20s, and no quarterback at all went after him until the third round.
Yeah, but
It
this
could be
is
one. It could be one of those years. I mean, I think you got number one, Cam Ward's coming off the board, and then what? I'm sure Shooter Sandals is going in round one. I don't. I think that's. I think we're going to get 2 quarterbacks in round one. I think Milrow and Dart probably go round 2,
yeah.
and then there may be till round 4 before the other
But
guys
they
take
love
off.
that 5-year contract, especially with a quarterback that needs to be developed, because then they if they do hit in year 2 or year 3, then you've still got them for a couple of years at that low ball number. So that's why I think they'll go round 1. I That may not go by 21, but I just feel like there's still so much. There's these coaches in particular, and to a certain extent the GMs whose jobs are really touch and go. They're going to just try a quarterback because they don't have one. Just because they have a void, they'll take almost anything that falls to them. They're like
Right.
starving dogs.
Look at that third, fourth, fifth round range. They've met with all of those quarterbacks, Tyler Shucks and the
Yeah.
guys from Ohio State and Notre Dame and all that crew. That seems to be where they've spent more of their time, which makes me think, all right, they're going to go defensive line round 1, round 3 best player or running back or something else that they need. Maybe the second defense, if it was me, second defensive lineman, and then in round 4 or 5, you take one of those quarterbacks to round out, to
Yeah.
either be your number 2 or number 3 in this upcoming season and go from there. But
Problem with that though is they haven't really met with any defensive linemen that are like round 1 defensive linemen, for that matter, even round 2. I think they more or less. That's what makes me think that one of
pro
two.
days, they were at pro days for all those guys, and
Oh
they
no,
were
they didn't see Derek Harmon. They didn't, as far as I know, meet with him at the combine, not officially.
their defensive staff was up in Michigan. So
Yeah,
and then Old Miss, they were down. So they were
they
looking
had
at
a
some of these
couple,
top
but man,
prospects.
like okay, it's like they didn't do the big song and dance, big show of force, dinner with the prospect, all that crap. As far as I know, with any of the sort of guy defensive linemen you might think of as picks in the first round, I feel like they've almost not met with anybody from that first round. So either they're super playing hide and seek with that pick, or they're picking a quarterback, or they have a plan to trade out, right?
That's what I've been wondering. Like, could they possibly be talking themselves up towards a quarterback to get people to either jump them or trade back, and then they come kind of like, they've got somebody early round 2 who wants to jump up and get that quarterback. Maybe they don't think that Jalen Milrow is worth a first round pick, but boy, if I could move from pick 36 up to pick 21 and get him, that
Mhm.
suits me well. The Steelers drop back, and now they have a 2 and 2 3s to work with. Because if you look at the visit list, I said it on the board in the thread the other day. It's like none of these guys are first round picks. It's all
Yep,
mid round picks.
yeah.
And it really seems to me like that might be the strategy. Like, yeah, I don't think they're taking Matthew Golden in round 1. They're not taking a receiver when they just spent a second round pick to get DK. And unless they trade Pickens and get another pick that way, I
Hmm.
don't see receiver. I don't see them taking a safety. They've got 2 good starting safeties right now. I definitely could see a defensive lineman there, but like you said, none of those guys are being brought in. I'm sure they obviously have scouted those guys. I mean, they've been to Michigan. I like Kenneth Grant a lot. Is a nose tackle worth the first round pick? Maybe, maybe not. Can he play defensive end too? Yeah, I think so. Um, Walter Nolan, same thing. He's more of an edge, but who else was up there? Like Tyleek Williams from Ohio State. He's
Yeah.
more of a would be more of a nose in our system as well. But that's to me what I'm looking at, thinking: are they trying to tell people, hey, the Steelers might take a quarterback to generate interest in a move back to get a second and third? Now they have a two and a couple of threes, and they feel like they can fill the needs that they have, and they spent a ton of time bringing in draft picks that are going to go between rounds 3 and 5.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it looks like. I mean, I wonder this. Here's a wild thought. Would you trade uh your pick at number 21 for a second round pick this year and a first next year, which is the kind of thing that people do?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
Because to me, that this scenario that what they've been doing and who they've talked to almost sets up really well for that. Like that would sort of make it all make sense to me in a way.
and like I said, I'm a conspiracy theorist. The draft in Pittsburgh next year, all the ESPN talking heads and everybody around the sports media is, Pittsburgh's quarterback situation's been screwed up since Ben retired. Man, it's just they're just writing the script, right? It's setting up perfectly. I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be screaming, and we're
Yeah.
gonna get our quarterback next year.
Oh
So
yeah. No, more like they've already have Jalen Milroe, so they're going to draft a guard, or a linebacker in front
Sean
of all those
Andrews.
people. Can you imagine?
They're going
Oh.
to draft Sean Andrews next year. That's what it'll be. Tomlin's going to talk him away from drafting the next stud quarterback. We really need a right guard. Yeah, okay, we got you, coach.
Oh my. One last question for you, Pritchard. That would be any kind of I'll open it up. The rest of the draft, like favorites of yours that give me a handful of names that are Perch approved. Like if you were the owner of the Steelers and you said, "Hey, I'll leave you guys to do the drafting, but it could be it could be a first rounder, it could be a late pick." Who do you
Listen, I
think?
I
Yeah.
I am I have been for years. I want defensive line, like since Tuitt left. Like we don't really have a real nose tackle. Tuitt was gone. We never really completely replaced him with a good player. Hayward, God bless him, how he's still hanging on, but he's one injury away from being retired, right? I mean, he might have one good season left. I doubt he has two. Um, I like all of it. I mean, I like Kenneth Grant. I like him a lot. I like Darius Alexander and T.J. Sanders and Walter Nolan and Harmon. I've got some questions. Like Oregon's run defense was horrendous, but they've got like a first round defensive tackle and a third round nose tackle in the draft. Like what happened there?
Yeah.
They were really bad. I mean, they had some linebacker issues, but their defensive line was not impressive. I like Alfred Collins too as a nose. I mean, you don't want to draft a nose in the first, but if that guy would fall to the third. I think we need running back a lot too. There's a ton in this draft, and you and I talked about that. I think Quinshawn Judkins really matches what they do well if he fell to the third round. If they
Safe.
go late,
He feels like a safe pick, not necessarily like a great one,
he
but
feels
safe.
like a Steeler. Ollie Gordon, if he fell to that fourth round group, like
Hmm.
Damian Martinez from Miami,
Yep.
Dylan Sampson from Tennessee, Ollie Gordon from OK State, like that group, I think matches really well. Because it depends what you think about Jalen Warren. Like I think Jalen Warren's a really good number two, where he comes off the bench with just a ton of energy and burst. What the hell is he going to look like when he's getting Najee carries? Like
Yeah.
it's going to completely neuter what he does well and adds to the team. Um,
And they
they
kind
got
of need
Gainwell.
they need a short yardage. I mean, the game was like a nice option in your 2 minute drill and your
They
third
need a
round
power
picks.
guy, which Judkins is that guy. Amarion Hampton's another one. Like, could that be the first round pick? Could they
Yeah.
move back a little bit and still get him, or do they just take him and say, he just profiles well to be an explosive and good vision and durable and got size to him. And
Hmm.
but if we're drafting a running back in round one, we have so many needs on defense that
Well,
the
hey,
defensive tackle.
if we're drafting Milrow in round one, that's the same as drafting a running back.
Yeah, two birds, one stone. There you go. I bet he could play some receiver too. Have Mason Rudolph chuck him the ball.
Well, I mean, for sure. Like, if Jalen Milrow, let's put it this way: if Savion Williams, Jalen Milrow, and all of the running backs in this class, including Genty and Marion Hampton, were all lumped in together as running backs. I'm not 100% convinced that the order of those two guys might be higher up in the those two guys that are playing other positions right now might be higher up in the hierarchy than you'd think in terms of way NFL teams would see them, because both
Right.
of them are like 220, like they're both 225 or something, right? I mean,
Yeah.
bigger guys that run like the wind. One's a 4.3 guy, the other's 4.4.
And
That's
it,
that works.
yeah. And if we trade away Pickens, and get a second round pick, Jaden Higgins is kind of a similar sort of player.
Hmm.
That might not be the worst. I mean, there's a nice little crop of wide receivers there that are kind of in that second, third round range that kind of suit the Steelers. But I think they spent some time with what's his name, Jalen Royals from Utah State. I think he's more of a complete route running receiver, that sort of thing. So there's players there that I like.
Who's your? Let me ask you this: Who's your favorite Penn State player, and who's your favorite player that Penn State played against that you saw this year?
I mean, the people that played against Penn State, the Michigan defensive line. I mean, that's the players that I'd really like to see come to the Steelers. So you've got obviously um, uh,
Mason Graham and Kenneth Graham.
Mason Graham's not going to make it that far down, but so you got some players there. Penn State players. Um, both of the safeties I thought were pretty solid. I think they're good NFL prospects. Other than that, they don't have a whole lot in the draft that would actually apply to what the Steelers do. Abdul
He
Carter,
won't.
there's
But if
obviously.
if Tyler Warren made it to 21,
Oh yeah, I kind of forgot about him. I wouldn't take him. What the hell are you going to do with him? Seriously, like you've got
well,
two
he's a
other.
Pat Fryermuth replacement. That's what he would be.
But Pat Fryermuth just got a contract, so I know you don't like him and wish he didn't get a contract, but he did. So yeah, yeah. For the Steelers, just the two safeties, I think, are both NFL caliber guys that m- maybe we can. I kind of wonder. The Steelers have been looking at safeties. Like, are they not happy with Fitzpatrick? Do they not want to give him another contract? I think that's something to look at as well. So
It's sort of like they keep remember when Todd Haley was the offensive coordinator and the offense kept saying like he can't be on the sideline, he's got to be over there away from us, and then they were like put him in the booth, and then the next step was going to be like put him in his
yeah,
car orbiting the earth while we're playing. I feel like Micah Fitzpatrick's getting the same treatment. It's like, can we play him a little farther back, like maybe? How do you feel about Cleveland, for those of you 80s movies fans? But it's like the fact that they're just moving him away from the ball makes me wonder if there's something else going on there.
yeah, I mean, he hasn't made a play either. Like the only time you really see him in a game is if there is a big play and he's running after somebody and diving at their ankles.
Yeah.
'Cause maybe probably because he's lined up in Washington County.
That's what I'm saying. It's like playing so far deep. I don't understand like why pay a safety? Like to me, in a way, once again, if I'm Howie Roseman, I'm trading Micah Fitzpatrick for you know for for some kind of pick because I'm not really utilizing what he can do anyway. And we're not going to give up any fewer yards, more yards on the ground if we replace our safety. You know what I mean? It's like we might as well get younger at the position and get somebody who's perfectly fine playing deep center field.
Right. Yeah, it's again, nothing we will talk about on this podcast is going to matter until they get rid of Mike Tomlin. I don't know if I've said that yet, but
Yeah, that's a good place to end, Perch. Listen, try not to break your TV on draft night.
I'd have to care more than I do to break my TV.
Well, Jalen Milrow trading up for Milrow could press the buttons. I'm just saying.
Oh boy.
I know exactly. All right. Well, listen, Steel Perch, don't be a stranger. I know you got to spend time fishing and drinking adult beverages, but maybe we'll put an adult beverage on the line for how many quarterbacks get picked in the first round. I'm saying the over under is 3, and you're taking the under. So
I'm
I'm
taking
taking.
under. I think it's 2, unless, like I said, unless somebody from round 2 trades back to the end of round 1
Hmm.
to come get Milrow or Dart. They're trying to talk up on these stupid talking head shows. Well, Jackson Dart might go in the top 10. He might be the second quarterback off the board. I'm like, I don't think so. But like I said, our evaluation of the quarterbacks and the NFL team's desperation to get one don't really interlock that well.
Nope,
So,
that is the problem.
yeah, that's the problem. And I use
We're one of those teams now, man. We have nothing. We have nothing. Not a thing. I can't imagine what's going on in the headquarters, but I guess we'll find out. Perch,
Yep.
Thank you very much. Come back on the show, talk after the draft. Let's talk about what happened.
Sounds good.
All right, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. All right, so that's the end of this episode of the pre-draft extravaganza. But don't forget that we will be back with tomorrow. We'll be back with the regular podcast crew this year, talking about Steelers needs and some of these same, like, WTF is going on with the Steelers is the sort of the subject, and then we're going to try to set our draft board the following night, and then we're going to do a live draft where we are, instead of working against a simulator or only in our own minds who's available in round 2 or round 3. We're going against 31 other teams of GMs in a live draft broadcast on draftprofessor.com, Draft Professor's station on YouTube. And I will be hosting Saturday. Lots of stuff this week. So tune in, tune on, turn on, tune in, whatever the hippies used to do. I'm your host, Wil Masisak. Brett Trotta, Ben, Accidental Zen. Thank you again to SteelPerch and everybody at Steeler Fury. See you guys next time on the podcast.
Steeler Fury. SteelerFury.com.